All right, so um, you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Oh, cool. All right, so I don't know. We could talk about the from Abigail. I keep thinking Jane Addams in this Hull House, and that's wrong.
Yeah.
Abigail Adams, 1776, but I think that's going way too far because I mean they struggled for a long time. That's really what we could get at, right?
They struggled from the very beginning exactly to be represented and to be seen as equals in things. And we've noted throughout our conversations with the students the different things that women have provided during history.
And that they saw suffrage, the right to vote, as full like personhood. I mean, after the Civil War, after the 15th Amendment, and black men got the right to vote. That's 1870. The only people who didn't have the right to vote were women. I now mean people that it will say adults. The only adults who didn't have the right to vote were women, criminals, and crazy people.
And now we get crazy people running for office, so that kind of left out women and criminals.
So, as the new, that's why I have this picture down here. As the Western states came into the Union, the later states, when they came in, they gave women the right to vote, right from Jump Street. That's like this woman's kind of marching her way east, giving votes for women. It's kind of the opposite of that Manifest Destiny the picture. Now I
It,
think
it,
about it.
it really is, yeah, because the suffrage movement moved west to east in this case, where the manifest destiny was that whole east-west going from light to dark.
Right, right. And I don't know. Did as into World War I, did you mention with your kids anything about who Jeanette Rankin is?
No.
She's a very interesting woman. Jeanette Rankin was the first woman member of the House of Representatives.
Okay.
And when World War I started, she voted. She was a pacifist. She was a representative from, I think, Montana, but she voted against World War I. She voted against the war and said, "No." Interesting person. She left the House of Representatives, but was back in the House of Representatives in 1941. In December of 1941.
I wonder what happened.
Staunch
Something,
pacifist.
something infamy. I don't know.
Yeah, she was the only person to vote no against going in to declaring war against Japan.
She's
And
consistent. If nothing else, she's consistent.
exactly, and so that makes her the only person who voted no in both world wars. So
She didn't
there
care,
were others.
she didn't care the Kaiser was assassinated. She didn't care about that. She didn't care that ships were blown up on American soil, or sort of American soil.
Oh, it was American territory, so it's American soil.
It's a
So that's
whole
why I
nother
had
lecture.
Jeanette Rankin opposed war, and women did stuff, during World War I. They were working in the factories. They were supporting the soldiers in their way. And this Alice Paul, I have this link to her. She's another very interesting woman. Local, New
She
Jersey.
is, yes,
So
from New Jersey.
I thought this would be a good video to show, assuming that I can actually get this to open up. Open hyperlink. No, I'm guessing that you can still see my screen.
I can still see the screen so far.
Still see the video.
Alice Stokes Paul was a leading figure in the fight for women's right to vote in America. Born in 1885 at her family's farm in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, she dedicated her life to working for legally protected gender equality. Alice Paul got involved in the women's suffrage movement while attending university in England. Her experiences there armed her with bold new tactics that she introduced to the suffrage movement in America. These tactics included public soapbox speeches and organizing mass open-air events.
Yeah, it's not playing.
Alice Paul gained a reputation as a radical force in the fight for suffrage. Her organization, the National Women's Party, led the effort to get the vote through an amendment to the United States Constitution. In 1917, Alice led groups of women to picket in front of the White House, an action that no one had dared to do before. Throughout that year, groups of silent sentinels stood in front of the White House 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, rain or shine, to bring greater public awareness to the cause and to put pressure on the president and Congress. As pressure mounted in the late spring of 1917, 168 silent sentinels were arrested and jailed on the charge of obstructing traffic. Alice Paul herself was jailed, and soon after, she led 80 suffragists in a hunger strike. In response, prison authorities initiated painful, forced feedings of the women. Word of the brutal treatment began to spread, and public pressure led to the release of the women from jail. Alice Paul's tactics were effective. In 1919, the amendment to the United States Constitution passed both houses of Congress. It took another 14 months for the required 36 states to ratify the amendment. On August 26th of 1920, women in the United States finally won the right to vote when the 19th Amendment became law.
Okay. So, women working during the war and just constant pressure on the president, they were able to get a constitutional amendment passed, the 19th Amendment. You know what this picture is here, though? Right over on the right-hand side.
There's a couple on the right hand side. The very bottom one?
The top one here. This one.
No, what is that?
Force feeding. They mentioned that people who had been arrested and force fed. They went on hunger strike, and they're like, we can't have them dying of hunger in the jail. So they shoved a tube up their nose, down the back of their throat, and that's how they force fed them.
Because we don't want people dying for a cause. They might get their point across.
Exactly, and certainly that is, because you try to pour something down someone's throat, they could choke on it or whatever, or they can spit it out. But yeah, that's a way to make sure that they're being fed. Let's see. What do I have? It's some more pictures. This was from a march and a parade down Pennsylvania Avenue in March of 1913, before World War I. And these two pictures are from that day. And there was actually violence that broke out.
A lot of violence. And some of the things that we don't see in our history books, because they're fifth grade history books, was the physical abuse that women took of getting beat up for their cause, that the men didn't want them to have this. And these groups opposed them wanting the right to vote. And women were physically and brutally assaulted.
Right. Even the silent sentinels in all weather, standing in front of the White House. That was it. That was their protest, just standing there. And they had stuff thrown at them. They were punched, beat up, arrested. This was how they were arrested for blocking traffic, by the way. They were standing on a sidewalk.
Yeah, that's right. And it's funny because Alice Paul spent her time over in England and then put together these silent sentinels. I'm wondering if it was anything after like the British Guard where they stand silent, the silent sentinels.
Along those, but she didn't want the movement in America to be quite as violent as it was in England. It got in England, the suffragettes chained themselves to radiators in Parliament. They broke windows. One woman, she went to put a ribbon onto the king's horse during a horse race, and she got trampled to death. So it was it was more militaristic in England than it was here, but still, it seems interesting to me that the idea of giving women the right to vote was in some way taking away from men's rights, and that's why the men were so strongly against it. And I don't see how giving someone else the same rights as you, it takes away from your rights at all. But what do I know? But I figured Here's the actual wording of the 19th Amendment, that the right of United States citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States by any state on account of sex. So women get to vote.
That's it.
So
Yay,
hopefully
ladies.
our students can send us some good questions that we'll pass along to the judge during the meetup on Tuesday.
Yep, that's it. Don't forget, guys, we're meeting with a judge on Tuesday. We met him last year as fifth grade teachers. Really cool guy, really knowledgeable fellow on this stuff. And he wanted to talk about the 19th Amendment. And, especially ladies, if you have any questions about it, feel free to email them to Mr. Tavener or myself, and we'll moderate the discussion with the judge. You guys zoom in, and listen. If any questions come up during the discussion that you want to ask, you can either send them to us in the chat, or we'll have you ask them at the end. That's worked out pretty good for some of the stuff that we've done. But email them or text them to us through Remind. However you want to get them to us, we'll put them together for next week.
Excellent. And of course, have fun.
Be safe.